Thank you for auditing Professor Skye's Record Review, the only first listen new music review show hosted by a French professor in his daughter's room, because every other room in the house is filled with some member of my family doing something. So, first of all, this is the first episode after my strokes episode. I don't know what happened. I hit some kind of algorithm lottery. I'm now up over 1,000 subscribers, and it's really gotten in my head. I don't mean it's gotten to my head. I mean it's gotten in my head. Like, what do I do? Do I change the channel? Should I only talk about the Strokes? Should I review old albums? Should I come up with like a logo? No. I'm just gonna do the same thing. So you might have watched my Strokes video and you're onto this and you're like, that's okay. Thank you for watching whatever videos of mine you make. This channel goes on a couple of philosophies. One, it's one old man's attempt to try to stay mentally young through music. And it's also about giving positive reviews. I don't review things I don't like. There's enough negativity on the internet. Let's think about things and learn about new things. So it's my hope that my channel gets so big that people actually experience more and better music. You know, right now on Facebook, there's this whole thing of like, show 10 albums that influenced you. And all my friends are Generation Xers like me. And all the albums are like Chemical Brothers, Public Enemy, Tribe Called Quest, Nirvana. It's like, guys, there's albums like the one I'm going to be reviewing today by STRFKR, Future Past Life. Okay, so the band is actually called STRFKR, like F-U-C-K-R. I don't swear on this channel. But they stylized it to be STRFKR. And this reminds me of when my father once saw a t-shirt, and the t-shirt just said STFU. And he just looks at me and just goes, Stufu? And still to this day, my family, we like to say Stufu. STRFKR, comes, I think, originally from a Rolling Stones song off of Goat's Head Soup, I believe. Or maybe it's only rock and roll. I've been talking a lot about the Stones lately. There's Nine Inch Nails song, STRFKR's Incorporated. I don't know why they're called STRFKR, but I'm just going to tell you what I read when I read their name for the first time. STRKR. So I'm going to be reviewing an album by STRKR, Future Past Life. And as your professor, you're auditing my class. I'm not going to give you any grades or anything. I want to show you the cover to this album. This is a spectacularly good cover. As you know, I'm slightly obsessed with album art, and this is a very good example. And I'm going to be giving you some homework right now. This is your assignment. Listen to this album while staring at this artwork. That's what I did today. I sat in my daughter's room, and I just stared at this image and listened to the music. This right here, these clear lines, this slightly uncomfortable but uplifting juxtaposition of slightly psychedelic images that are very clear but also somehow hazy and distant, that's the album that you're going to listen to. This is a visual representation of the record. Now, I thought, okay, there's 10 tracks on the album. The last track basically doesn't count. It's almost all sounds. So maybe each one of these goes along with one of the songs. And I sat there and I tried to make it work like a bad IQ test. I couldn't get the circle to go into the triangle slot. It doesn't quite work that way. But it's a great way of understanding what makes this a very interesting and very entertaining album. I could just look at this forever. But something that I really notice is that it's this juxtaposition of things which slightly work but make you slightly uneasy. And this album, you like it, but you're slightly uneasy the entire time. You see how it ends? With a face mask? It starts all over here. Look, we're inside of a room, but we're going to outer space, and we're in outer space, and we're in little rooms. You know, it's this great surrealistic image. Reminds me a lot of good psychedelic art. But it ends with a gas mask. And I would say that's a theme that goes throughout this entire album. Things start in one place, and they're kind of clear and chipper, but there's these little undertones of like, crinkle. And then at the end, you're like, everything just is terrible. Everything falls apart. This is really an album that's based on these couple things. Unsettling juxtaposition of common items, like a butterfly painting its room, and things falling apart. Musically, it's basically all guitar based, but like with a little bit of elements added on, in particular some synthesizer elements. I sort of think of the guitars like the lines in the drawing, and the synthesizers and everything else as kind of like the colors that fill it in. In general, I would say the band this reminds me the most of. The singing reminds me a little bit of Elliott Smith, just in its very kind of like breathy and whispery. But the band it reminds me most of is actually Air. A lot of the feelings I had was kind of Air. There's very nice, strong bass work on this album, and the bass is really high in the mix. And I'm going to play you a little bit of the first song in a second. But it's really quite nice. And the biggest surprise to this album, and I learned this on the second listening, is the drummer is awesome. An amazingly good drummer. But not the kind of amazingly good drummer where you'll go to the drum store and go, oh man, have you heard the drummer for STRFKR? Oh man, he's so good. Or she's so good. I don't even know. What's the name of the drummer? Are you a fan of the band? Put it in the comments. Does everybody know how good this drummer is? They are amazing, and I'll tell you why as we go throughout the album. I think what I'm going to do now, though, I want to get you settled. I want to get you a sense of what this music sounds like. I'm going to play you 14 seconds of the first song, Dear Stranger. Perfect example of the kind of songwriting and the mode and the mood that they set on this album. Dear Stranger. Dear meaning close, stranger meaning someone you don't know. Also, it's like a letter to somebody you've never met. Great contradiction. What I want you to listen to here is the way that the synthesizer is used to create kind of interesting punctuation over this guitar work. The way that the synthesizer lines, I'm not going to play you the end, but I'll tell you, as the song goes, the synthesizer lines start to get more and more sustained until they start to bleed over each other. Until by the end, the synth lines that were so nice and clean at the end get all muddy. It kind of descends into madness with this like random background noise. But I'm going to play you just a chunk in the middle to give you a sense of the atmosphere of this album. So here's a little bit from Dear Stranger by STRFKR, starting now.
Your world is all that I ever knew.
Okay, I hope you heard what I heard in that. I actually meant to bring my computer up and play it here, but I left it in the basement where I do my lessons. I do all my lessons in the basement now. It's very strange. So really, it's just a great, if you like the atmosphere in that song, I think you'll like it. It actually works pretty well that this follows my oddly successful Strokes video. They're not that far apart in terms of the ability to create an atmosphere while still being rock and roll. I mean, it's called indie pop, but I would say it's just rock, you know? The next track, Never the Same, shows maybe one of their weaknesses / strengths. They do a lot of work with modulation, so they'll go like dum 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 dum, like they just slide things up, but that creates that uncomfortable feeling, you know? An uncomfortable feeling like two little ladybugs and a little toy holding on to each other for no reason in the middle of a room. You know, but what's nice, and this is, if you listen to it on a second time, a very good headphones album, by the way, is that there's like this warbling effect that goes into the vocals as well, and it creates that unsettling feeling. The next track is Deep Dream. There's actually a video that I happened to catch. It's pretty nice. It's like a short story. And this is where you start to get a sense of the drummer. Now listen to this track. Listen, I've already given you the homework, right? It's not even pass-fail. I can't check your work. It's like school is right now. Hey, if you're one of my students watching, did you know that, like one of my real students, basically everybody's going to get an A if you do the work. Shh. Everything's a lie. Teaching during COVID is basically pointless. It's 100% up to the students to make it work. Okay. So Deep Dream, right? I want you to listen to it. I want you to look at this while you listen to it, but really pay attention to the drumming. He does this thing with the bass drum where he does like a dum, like a little double thump. And he does it at another point in the album too. I can't quite remember where. But it ends up being sort of an example of the way this drummer is thinking rhythmically that adds complexity to a fairly simple song that's just really satisfying. Also, he does a lot of the kind of 4 snare hits. So, ba, 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 like this, as opposed to, do do bat do 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 bat do. So he does a lot of the kind of like 4 hits, which keeps the tempo up and the energy up, which is quite nice. While often the synths are going down and the guitar's kind of flatly strumming. The drummer is secretly, I think, the most important part of this band. There's also this cool kind of like woodblock bit in this song. It's a really really nicely made and well produced song. The next track, Second Hand, another weird kind of double meaning, like second hand, like you have 2 hands, but also like it's passed down, more unsettling titles where you sort of understand what they are and not. At times on a song like this and throughout much of the album, you feel sort of like someone's putting their finger on a cassette tape as it's playing, and it just slows down slightly and you can't quite figure out why. And then the lyrics are, I'm feeling sick again. And you can sort of feel a little bit sick listening to this album. Just a little bit, not too much. It's still mostly bright and clear. But there's just those little hints. Better Together is the only track I didn't like on the album. It's like just guitar. There is a little like dipsy-doos in the back. I wish they moved forward. Although I said that there was one bad track on the Strokes album, and I almost got lynched by all the Strokes fans who love that track. I'm sorry. I just don't like it that much. We don't have to agree on everything. Okay, then the next track, Budapest, featuring the Shy Boys. I don't know who they are, but really has probably the coolest instrumental part on the album, where they have these nice clean synthesizers that go into a super distorted, maybe guitar sound. I'm going to tempt fate and play it for you here. I'm going to play it just 5 or 6 seconds of it here. I might get copyright striked, but who cares, okay? So there's an example of some of the innovative sounds that they're able to put together. And again, it's a question of juxtaposition, putting things together. Let's listen to it now. Next track is called Palm Reader. Again, kind of unsettling. It ends with him just saying, just be yourself, and it trails off. So much of this album is just like something happens and it ends with a gas mask. Sea Foam is just great. Nice, like boppy synths that are hitting octaves. Again, wonderful drumming. Sea Foam might be my favorite track on the album. I can't tell. A sign of a good album is if you listen to it twice and you can't pick out your favorite song. That's a really good sign. What's nice about this is things fall apart, but then they reform, which is pretty cool to have things fall apart and reform in the same song. If I were their producer, I would say make that your standpoint. Make that your staple. Make that the thing that makes you, that be your signature, where you fall apart, but then bring things back together again. It's a little bit more enjoyable. It's really beautiful. And again, the drummer is doing this great thing with his hi-hat. He's hitting the hi-hat on the last beat, and it just creates this kind of openness to the rhythm. It's really good. And this also has the best layering of the vocals. And then the last real track is called Pink Noise, and it's all in your mind. When you get to that point, when you've stared at this image for 40 minutes, 35 minutes, it's all in your mind. You start to feel like you live in this house. Is this a house? Is this a museum? Is this a dollhouse? Where are the stairs? Where are we? This is better art than it should be. This should just be some like crappy, like, oh man, it's so trippy. It's really well done. It's a really great album cover. Man. A nice kind of guitar lead too. More of the most kind of aggressive guitar on the album. And then it ends with coughing. And then the last track, Cold Comfort, not one of the 9 tracks, is just kind of noise. It all falls apart. So there you go. There's my review of STRFKR. I like this album a bunch. I really think you should listen to it. That's my review. I don't give 5 out of 10s. If you're here, I don't give numbers. I don't say thumbs up or thumbs down. If I'm talking about it, it's a thumbs up. All right. Buy more music, listen to more music, and for all the porgs in the entire world, there's the camera.